In the 1970s, I feel like some designers asked themselves, what is it we can build that wasn't built before? Oh yeah, boards. So instead of playing with fixed boards, some designers started experimenting with the idea of a board that is built as the game progresses by adding terrain tiles. So we started building boards. In the early 2000s, with the entire deck building school of thought, traditional games, so we started building decks. I feel like then somebody asked, okay, what else can we build that we haven't built yet? Cards. That's something that we haven't built. During gameplay, we design them usually and then we print them as they are and we send them out. Why not come up with a game where the players get to build the cards as the game progresses, as part of the game engine? Very fascinating, very interesting idea. If one that I have to tell you, as soon as I heard it, sounded very gimmicky to me, and that is always a risk that you have with ideas that sound incredibly innovative and exciting. They may be just so, or they may just be a gimmick that loses its shining aspect as soon as you look close into it. Mystic Vale is a fantasy game by AG where you do build your cards as the game progresses. It's based on ideas that you find in deck building games, so that is, use resources to buy things that you add to your deck, but in this game you do not add cards, ready-made cards that you purchase from the table to your deck. You add upgrades to a deck of cards that you have at the beginning, and so you alter the nature and composition of your cards as the game progresses. Very interesting take. Again, very original innovation or empty gimmick. We'll talk about that in the conclusions of my video. First, let's take a look at the game. Like in pretty much every deck building game that I know, you have a starting deck of cards. This is thicker than you have in most deck building games because your starting deck is also your only deck. You will not get new cards into your deck as the game progresses, but you will alter the nature and composition of your cards. Cards are these nice large tarot size cards, and they all need to be sleeved for reasons that will be obvious as I explain the game. Your cards will have various symbols. Some will be blank. The main symbols that you see at the beginning are mana symbols, these light blue circles, and you have decay, spoil symbols. At the beginning of the game, and also later in the game, in preparation of each turn, you will look at your deck. There will always be a card on your deck face up on top of your deck. It's called the on-deck card. There are specific game effects that target it, and for game effects, it doesn't count as part of your deck, and also neither does it count as part of your play, of your territory, of your play area. So the first round, in preparation of the first round, and then later in preparation of each round, you will flip a card face up on your on deck to create an on deck card, and it'll move it into your play area, and you repeat the procedure until you will see 3 decay symbols. 3 decay symbols total. That will mean usually 1 on your on deck card and 2 in your play area. There may be other situations that will present you with more than 3 symbols in this phase, more than 3 decay symbols. That will be a huge problem, and that happens if you have more than a single decay symbol on a card, and then that card turns out to be the one that is right there on the deck. So that's how I prepare for the first turn, and how I prepare for the following turns. Then when I'm taking my turn, I can decide to be happy with the cards that I have in play, make do with the resources that they generate to purchase stuff, or I may try to push my luck. If I push my luck, I simply take the card that is here on deck, I add it to my play area, and I flip another one face up to make a new on deck card. If I still see only 3 decay symbols and no more than that, I'm still good. If suppose I did reveal a 4th symbol, then I would have spoiled. When you spoil, you pretty much skip the rest of your turn. There is nothing else that you can do if you spoil. That would be a case of a spoil situation. This one wouldn't. If I haven't spoiled, I can keep pushing my luck, and I can decide to keep keep going. Basically, this phase where you're preparing to take your turn, where you are trying to collect resources, if you decide to go down that road, will end when you decide to stop and use the resources that you have, or when you spoil. And if you spoil again, your turn pretty much is over. You discard these cards and you get ready for the next turn. If you did not spoil, you get to spend the resources that you have. Also, I have to say, when you're determining whether you spoil or not, there may be symbols on your cards. They're cute little green trees, such as this one, and each such symbol annuls a spoil effect. Now, when you're taking the main part of your turn, there are several things that you can do. Maybe you have game effects in play that will generate victory points. So then you take these tokens here to keep track of the victory points that you have collected that way. Maybe there are the game effects that resolve in that phase, but most of what you will want to do here is to purchase cards. You have 3 levels of cards that you can buy: level 1, level 2, and level 3. And it's not that easy to see it here. It's just that little dot, and also the color and style of the edge here that differs and tells you which of these cards are level 1, level 2, and level 3. Interesting enough, the decks of available cards for purchase at level 2 and level 3 is always the same. You always have the whole level 3 and level 2 deck. As for level 1, at the beginning of the game, you randomly select some of these cards, so you form a deck which is not always the same from game to game, because you do not use all level 1 cards in all games. Also, available for purchase, you always have a deck of fertile soil, which is your basic commodity that produces mana. When you want to purchase a card, that is the cost that you need to pay using the mana that you have produced. So that fertile soil, for example, costs 2. This upgrade here costs 4, 4, 4, 2, and so on and so forth. And there will be 3 cards available for each level, for each type of advancement. So 3 level 1 advancements will be available for purchase, 3 level 2, and 3 level 3. And then, of course, they will be refilled later. When you purchase a card, an upgrade, you choose a card that you have in your area, and you add your upgrade to that card. You need to have an available slot. So I could add this card here, I could add it here, but you cannot cover things that are already on the card. For example, I could not add this upgrade here to this card, but I could add it to this card. So as the game progresses, your cards will become more and more interesting. Maybe many of your cards will gain upgrades. Maybe you'll decide to concentrate a lot of upgrades on only a bunch of cards to have some really super powerful cards with a lot of upgrades, and then some of the cards a little empty. So as you can imagine, the customization here is huge. It's huge because there are just so many different combos that you can create, so many different ways of creating cards. And as you can see, there really is a range of things that you can do, because each card can get up to 3 upgrades if it starts as a completely blank one. So this would be a pretty neat card. This would be the symbol that, as I said earlier, generates victory points. Well, I talked about the victory points, that's how you get them. This is a symbol that adds another spoil, so another decay, so do not put that on the same card, otherwise then you have a very dangerous card. This is a symbol that annuls the decay. You may have some other extra effects here. And then, super important, you have these symbols here. So in the first couple of rounds, you're spending mana to buy cards, and the cards that you buy also will give you these other colorful symbols here, which are spirit symbols. This is a spirit symbol, and, well, this would be a wild spirit. So you use these spirits to buy to buy cards that give you points. You also had these 2 decks of cards, and a line of cards will be available for purchase from this deck here, Spirit Cards level 1, and there will be also a line of cards available for purchase from this other deck here of level 2. And to purchase these cards, you use these symbols here. So use mana to buy game effects and spirit symbols that then you use to buy these other cards. In a sense, it reminds me of Splendor on how you had 2 levels of purchase, the immediate purchases, and then you need to build up an engine to buy more valuable stuff, to buy your the patronage of the aristocrats that visit your jewelry shop. Level 1 spirit cards, not too expensive and with some very mighty effects. Oh, this icon here means victory points that you score only at the end of the game, not like every turn when the icon shows up, like when you have cards with this light blue icon. But then the spirit cards give you some really powerful effects. For example, they'll allow you to gain spirit symbols, to avoid spoil, to spend mana to change a spirit symbol into another. So basically you use these cards to buy level 1 spirit cards that give you extra resources. Getting extra mana early on in the game is a huge advantage because you just have a much better resource engine. So you buy these cards to get spirit symbols that then allow you to buy much more expensive spirit cards, the one at level 2. And these ones also give you some interesting effects, such as this one, but mainly they allow you to score inordinate amount of victory points that, guess what, you need to win the game. They may not do much for you during the game, or they do absolutely nothing, but that is what, of course, matters the most at the end of the game. You continue like this, turn after turn. It's pretty simple, really. You push your luck at the beginning, buy new stuff from these decks, from the spirit decks, and you continue like this until a certain number of victory points has been assigned. Victory points represented by these tokens. This is pretty much the end of the game, what triggers the end of the game, and the number of victory points that's needed to trigger the end of the game, it depends on the number of players. It changes on the number of players. Once the end of the game is reached, players simply count victory points that come from these tokens that they collected during the game, cards and icons that give players victory points only at the end of the game, and some icons may come from the spirit cards, a lot of them. Also, there are some of those icons that come from the upgrades that you purchase during the game. And once you total all the victory points, the player that has the most is the winner of the game. Yes, I was afraid that the game would be gimmicky, but my fears were dispelled quite soon as I started playing the game, and I was really drawn into the engine, I was drawn into the idea. The fact that the cards look so beautiful, that the art is small, because you have small illustrations, smaller than you have on game components in other games, but it's so detailed, so colorful, so beautiful. So the fact that the art was so attractive was no small element for me to become immediately engaged, emotionally attached to the design. And then also the mechanics, luckily enough, turned out to be very solid. The game turned out to be very strong, full of interesting decisions, full of nice elements. I mean, it has all the elements that you see in deck building games, and it has elements that you see in games such as Splendor. You build your engine of resources, you used to buy more resources, etc, etc, etc. And you have that combined again with the random element of deck building games, in which you know what you buy, but you do not know exactly when the stuff that you buy will become available to you. But these known elements really get revitalized, rejuvenated by the card crafting idea, which feels very integral to the design, doesn't feel gimmicky at all. It is new, it's fresh, it is interesting, and it does result in a set of decisions, a range of options that simply I did not have before. So there's the excitement of exploring a different space of decision that other games had not given me. Really fun, really exciting, really interesting to decide not just what you want, that is standard, what you want to purchase and add to your pool of resources, but how to combine different things. Sometimes you want to push your luck because a certain effect is kind of like meh, but it will be powerful if you combine it with another upgrade that goes in the same card. But the point is that will you be able to buy the upgrade that needs to go together with the previous one when the card with the initial upgrade is available? I buy a card hoping that I can add a second upgrade, then maybe you'll buy the other upgrade that I need to combine with that one before the card gets back to me. And when the card gets back to me, the upgrade that I wanted, it's not available anymore. So that synergy that I was building is not available. Or maybe I can go for something that is immediately per se more appetizing, more attractive, but it does not have the same power, the same impact that you have if you're able to pull off one of these combos here. Are you going to spread out the upgrades across all of your cards or create synergies of this kind? Very interesting elements here. I like push your luck games in general. I like the fact that here you have this push your luck element, which really gives you just an extra layer of decision. You may never use it. You may simply be happy with what you have, but then sometimes you're just one resource short of something you like to do, and then what the heck, you just go with it. And like in all games with push your luck situations, there's going to be laughter, there are going to be cheers around the board as you see players that rush through all of their decks and miraculously, strangely enough, they are able to get a lot of cards and not to get in trouble. But then you know that there's a concentration of evil in the very few cards that are left at the bottom of the deck. And then other players that push the luck almost every turn, and 99% of the times they get to spoil. Like fun element, that fun visceral element that you have in push or luck games that usually you do not have in deck building games. Deck building games very often have more of a cerebral nature, have more of like almost algorithmic ideas, and actually that's something I don't like too much about games with games with deck building games that become sort of like a puzzle. It's just about identifying the best possible synergy ever. I don't find them all that interesting. They feel too dry and too cold. Well, here you have the visual element of push your luck that prevents a sort of mentality, that sort of atmosphere from taking place to start with. And then also you have the variable elements in the level 1 deck, which is key precisely to prevent players from getting too attached to one certain sequence of purchases. So I like that. I like the fact that you have to tactically respond to what's available on the table, create strategies on the fly. Yes, you will get a general sense of certain cards that you value rather than others, but then you do not know of level 1 they're available, so not all synergies are always available. So there's still decisions that you need to make from game to game. Fun. Some negative things, some negative aspects, not anything intrinsic really. One thing I may say, simply there's an aspect that may not be for everybody, that some players really dislike, that the game does feel for the most part like a multiplayer solo. Such is the nature of many deck building games, and here really the main way that you have to interact with other players is to steal stuff that you think they may want. But in other games that is more obvious. Here you really are not going to be able to keep track of what everybody else is buying and how they're combining them, and to deduct from that what is the next upgrade that they want, and therefore what is it that you can buy so that they don't get it. It's not going to work like that. You may end up doing that. You may end up depriving your opponents of resources that they want, and therefore furthering your cause and helping yourself, but it's going to happen by chance. I don't see this happening really by design much. So it's incidental interactivity that really doesn't come from you, simply comes from the events that occur in the game as a secondary effect of your multiplayer solo philosophy. So in that sense, it does feel like a solitaire game. It is about optimizing the engine that your deck has. It is about buying resources, but you don't really get the sense that you're interacting very much with the other players. I don't find that a problem at all. I'm mentioning it because I know that this is not everybody's cup of tea. And I think, similar thing when it gets to buying the Vale cards, those that you buy with the spirit symbols. Again, those are limited resources. Some are very attractive. but again, maybe you and your opponent are both rushing for the same card, but maybe there are two copies of the card out. Maybe one of you only gets a chance of getting it. So that head-to-head competition is not as intense because in most cases, simply I have it, I have the resources, I buy it. You're gonna get it maybe 3 turns later. You buy something else. Again, even in that sector of the game, it doesn't feel like it's a really strong and interactive competition. So there is that element. Again, not negative intrinsically for me, maybe a problem for some other players. Another thing, super mega minor, that sounds like a contradiction in terms. Some cards, those that generate resources over time, they give you an extra spirit symbol, an extra mana. If you are lucky and you get them early in the game and some of the players does not manage to get them, then there is simply an exponential advantage that you get that puts you ahead of everybody else and makes it hard for the players to catch up. So there is that aspect that there is an element of luck which is particularly strong early on in the game. If somebody gets an advantage and manages to build a very strong engine, a considerably stronger engine than everybody else before early on in the game, before the players get a chance of doing so, and maybe the cards that allow the players to do so don't come out immediately from the Vale deck, the spirit cards, then you may have a little bit of the leader situation. At least things are not too obvious. It's not too obvious that somebody else is ahead because all of their victory point symbols are scattered in different places of the deck, but there is that element. I don't know whether it can be fixed. I don't even know that it needs to be fixed. If you find that to be a problem, then you can simply manipulate setup, make it in such a way that cards of that kind are available at the beginning. You put them out there at the beginning so that if I buy one, the opponent may still buy another one, because again, the only problem of that sense really arises, there is one of them available, somebody buys it, and then there are some meh cards or okay cards, but not cards that generate resources constantly, and the players simply cannot compete with your production of resources, therefore cannot purchase upgrades as fast as you, and yada yada yada. Not again a problem per se, something that you may want to take into account if you feel that that gives too much weight to the role of Lady Luck in the early phases of the game. Other than this, an excellent game. It's original, it's fresh, it's innovative, it doesn't feel gimmicky at all to me. The elements really go well together. It's a game that presents me with interesting sets of challenges, doesn't overstay its welcome. You can easily play it a couple of times in a single game night. It's really easy to pick up and understand for players that are familiar with deck builders, because there are some very well-known concepts that come from that style of game. And so once you have that foundation there, picking up some of the new concepts is not all that hard. If you're a deck building kind of player, there aren't too many things that you need to unlearn to be able to play and enjoy Mystic Vale. Exciting new beginning, exciting new mechanics. I really want to see where the system goes. I'm excited to see what's going to be next. I'm sure that the game will be expanded, because I hope it is. Not because it's one of those games that needs that expansion to be fixed, not at all. I think the game is really solid and excellent as is. I just want to have more of this excellent game. I want to experience more effects, more combinations, etc, etc, etc. The rulebook also announces that there will be another game based on this general idea, a game that seems to be more ambitious, more like adventure oriented, and I have nothing against, druids like you have in this game, purifying the land and bringing good energy and doing all of the hippie stuff that they do. That's fine, but if we can have the card crafting system, which I love, paired with an action-oriented fantasy story, I'm even more excited. As is, we have an excellent game, Mystic Vale. Give it a try. It's new, it's fresh, it's innovative, and another quite important thing, is excellent. Really good game. I'm glad I played it. I loved it, and I can't wait to play it again. Mystic Vale by AG.